We just had to follow up Glasgow with Edinburgh, which is an only slightly smaller city. So here are the stadiums and arenas of Edinburgh, Scotland. Easter Road. The existence of the Easter Bunny is hotly debated amongst the scientific elite. But what's not up for debate is the existence of Easter Road. It's a real road, but you might be a little surprised to hear that this ground is not actually situated on Easter Road. It's around 300 metres away though, so that's fair enough. You also might be slightly surprised to hear that this place holds the record for the largest attendance at a Scottish football match outside of Glasgow, of around 65,000. Given its current day capacity is just over 20,000. It's the same old story. The ground was mostly surrounded by terracing back in the day, and there were less stringent safety regulations, yada yada. Nowadays it's a pretty conventional all-seater. One aspect that is slightly different is, due to room constraints, the southeastern and northwestern corners are cut off. And that's even noticeable from inside. I like that though, it adds a bit of character. Murrayfield is not only the home of rugby in Scotland, it's also the largest stadium of any kind in Scotland. Speaking of record attendances, this place once held the world record for a rugby match. In 1975, 104,000 people watched Scotland beat Wales. Of course, that wouldn't happen nowadays. Whales are protected creatures, owing to their decreasing population, and we wouldn't want to beat them.
No, you mustn't beat them. You must use grenade harpoon.
No, that's not what I meant, random Norwegian man. That's Anyway, that was a diversion and a half. Murrayfield was redeveloped extensively in the 90s, which is how it got to its current day configuration. I quite like how the layout is ever so slightly asymmetrical. It makes it just that little bit more interesting than Twickenham, which is England's equivalent stadium. Despite being owned by a Scottish rugby union, it was home to an American football team for 7 or 8 years. They no longer exist. Next door is Murrayfield Ice Rink, which was completed in the year 1939. So, as you might expect, it didn't end up hosting ice hockey for a while, not until several years after the war, 1952 to be exact. It is a humble building with a capacity of just a few thousand, but it does at least have a rather distinctive facade. That's partially why it's a Category B listed building, which presumably means that the owners can't make major changes to the pre-existing structures. What they have done is add an attached curling rink. To this day, the most entertaining thing that's happened in that building was when the paint dried. Nah, I shouldn't insult the sport, it's actually a Scottish creation. Also part of the same complex is Hive Stadium, the newly built second home of Edinburgh Rugby. Edinburgh Rugby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. I say second home, but in actuality it's where Edinburgh play most of their matches. As you might expect, this is a more appropriately sized venue for United Rugby Championship games. They actually closed off the upper tier of Murrayfield when they played there. This stadium cost a little under £6 million to build, which might only be slightly above average when talking about a home in Knightsbridge, but for a stadium it was an absolute budget build. So it has some shortcomings. Most notably, the roofs all have pillars holding them up, partially obstructing the view for a lot of spectators. At least they are sheltered from the rain. The pillars that I do like are those orange goalposts. Myreside Stadium was actually the temporary home of Edinburgh Rugby for a couple of brief periods, but the Watsonians have been here since it opened in 1933. It is, after all, situated on the campus of George Watson College, who the club is named after and sort of represents. They call themselves a football club because they are so old that they played their first match back in 1875, when rugby was, I believe, known as rugby football. As for the stadium itself, well, the listed capacity of nearly 14,000 seems generous. There is just one proper stand, but it is a rather nice one to be fair, and I guess there's a lot of room to stand around the ground still. Does it really have a capacity of only 6,000 less than Tynecastle Park? Having opened in 1886, this is the oldest professional football stadium in the city, And just like their crosstown rivals, the Jam Tarts have been here from the start. Come to think of it, this ground is rather similar to Easter Road. Okay, the capacity is nearly the same and they are both built in the traditional manner with a standalone stand on each side, but there are actually plenty of differences. It of course doesn't have those cut-off corners, and there is just a single tier of seating on all sides. Much like the exterior, the seats are done up in that lovely deep shade of maroon. Speaking of maroon, or words that sound like maroon, this is the Scottish macaroon. It's just straight up sugar covered in chocolate and coconut. I think there is a little bit of potato in there as well, but Jesus, Scotland. What's next? Deep fried Mars bars? Yes. I have to mention the Grange Club, which is Scotland's premier international cricket ground, believe it or not. It's pretty much the Lords of Scotland, in more ways than one. The Grange Club was the governing body of cricket in the country for a while, just like the MCC. As for the ground, it has one permanent stand, that being the clubhouse itself. But what a beautiful and unique clubhouse it is. It has seats on the roof. That's Scottish ingenuity right there. The rest of the field is surrounded by trees, so it's a very pretty ground, but not much else in the way of architecture to talk about. The last time England played here, Scotland won in a nail-biter. It was a big moment for Scottish cricket. You may have noticed that we've yet to see a significant indoor arena. That's because there isn't any in Edinburgh. However, there are plans to build an 8,500 capacity arena at Edinburgh Park. There is still a lot of water to flow under the bridge though. And those were the Stadiums of Edinburgh, Scotland. Thanks for watching, have a good one.